Good evening and welcome everybody to this Expats Portugal calling webinar tonight. The subject is buying a car in Portugal, what you need to know. Thank you to Paul, who's saying hello from a very warm Algarve, putting the emphasis on a very warm Algarve. Hello from lovely Aveiro as well. Very excited to see Jerry's presentation, says Susie. Hi, Susie. Dottie's here, Napa Valley, and Paul from the San Francisco Bay Area, and Warren in Canada tonight. Thank you for all your greetings. Keep them coming. Oh, Barack in Texas as well. Vizia, somebody here in Portugal, and of course, Anna in always lovely Cascais, as she was saying before. Muito calor tonight. Very hot there in Cascais today. Probably the same for you, Jerry, over there in central Portugal. You are our speaker tonight, and you have you've become the man, the go-to man, haven't you, when it comes to buying a car?
I know, Carl. I know. Yes, and we've been over 30 degrees centigrade today. I think it's currently about 29. Been a beautiful, balmy day. This is why we come to Portugal, right?
Yes, yeah, but probably not the best conditions putting a presentation together. I imagine you'd rather be out in the garden. So thank you very much for putting this together.
Okay.
For tonight, buying a car in Portugal, what you need to know. So we will go through the presentation with Jerry here. Please ask questions as we go in the chat, and then I'll make sure all your questions get addressed after. We'll have some Q&A with Jerry, and then we'll have a session after that, after the recording, where you can ask more personal questions if you wish, that won't be published to the internet, which this recording will be, of course. So over to you, Jerry.
Thank you very much, Carl. And hello and good evening, everyone from Portugal. I'm going to run through quite a lot of information tonight, so it might be handy if anybody wants to jot down any notes to have the pen and paper handy. A lot of what we're going to talk about is an update on the presentations we've done before, but I've got some new information as well. And also, I've tried to cover all the questions that come up on our forum, and people inquire of us when we do our consultations and so on. So without further ado, let's get started. One of the big questions that comes up again and again is about importing your own car. Can it be done? Well, the answer is yes, it can. But there are some requirements you've got to meet. Firstly, the vehicle must be in your name for at least 6 months before moving. That's so that you don't go out and buy a new car and try to import it without paying duty. If you're not driving the car to Portugal, the freight costs can be very expensive. I looked today at something like shipping a car from North Carolina to Lisbon, and I was getting prices around 4,000 euros, and that's just for the car. You will need a range of documents, most importantly a certificate of conformity from the manufacturer, and that's the critical one to get, because you need to get that from the manufacturer wherever your car was manufactured, and it can take a few months to come through, so that's something to think about. You will likely have to pay VAT at 23% in Portugal, and then a unique car sales tax called ISV, which can be up to 10% of the value of the car. The vehicle will need to meet European standards of conformity, and that may also be expensive. So, for example, a car coming from the USA will have different colored indicator lenses on the back. There's some change that has to be made with the way that the lights dip. Cars you have to be able to read the speed in kilometers, and so on. So that's something else that needs to be done. So, and this really is critical. We really recommend that you check the full costs before you make any commitment to ship the vehicle. And we work with 2 organizations that can help with that and can give you prices: ACP, the Automobile Club in Portugal, and Global International Relocation, who have a car import division. I looked briefly at what it might cost to import a car worth 20,000 euros or $20,000. And conservatively, I got to 12,000 euros, being a sort of an approximate cost to include the shipping. But that's for a fairly standard car that hasn't been modified and will generally conform with European standards. So it could be that sort of figure and up that you're talking about to import your own car. And I'll come back to that number later. So just please keep that in mind. So what about buying in Portugal? Well, firstly, I highly recommend that you buy from a dealer rather than an unknown private individual. It's possible to inherit outstanding debt on a car here in Portugal, whereas a dealer will have checked the finance on the car and made sure it's debt-free. And there will be other advantages with the dealer, that he will help you to register the car, and he'll send it out with a warranty and probably some get you home insurance. So really recommend that you go to the dealers. The prices you see at the dealers will include VAT, but you will have to pay a small additional fee to register the car in Portugal, which again, the dealer can take care of. You're probably talking about 80 to 100 euros to do that. And then road tax will be applicable when the existing tax expires. And I'll come back to that. The buying process is easy. Most prices can be negotiated, but you must have a NIF and you must have a Portuguese address in order to be able to buy a car in Portugal. Do consider the type of fuel and the miles per gallon performance. Both diesel and petrol or gas are expensive in Portugal, and so obviously the car that does the more miles per gallon is the better buy. So do give that some consideration. Hybrids and full electric vehicles are becoming more popular. Almost every garage now has some kind of charging facility, and the supermarkets, I think Lidl already have them in most of their stores, and they're rolling out in other stores as well. So I actually have an electric vehicle, and I've not encountered any problems with getting that vehicle charged at any time. Think about the size of the vehicle. Our roads can be very narrow, and parking a large vehicle can be difficult. And Carl, you will remember the time we got stuck up a medieval street. Having driven halfway up, we had to reverse all the way back because the street just got too narrow for the car. And it was quite a fraught moment. Do you remember that, Carl?
I shall never forget. The BMW was trying to help. It was screaming from every audible orifice, wasn't it? As we
every alarm and every sensor was going off, and yeah, it was a fun time. The other thing to be aware of is that most older non-luxury cars, by non-luxury I mean, you know, excluding the big BMWs and Mercedes and so on, but the older cars will be manual gear change, or stick, as you say in the States, and not automatic. So that's something to keep in mind. You can get automatic cars, but they tend to be newer. Previously, I think Portuguese people preferred to drive a manual car. Personally, I think that's nonsense. Why you would want to move a stick up and down all day, I have no idea. Two good websites to look at cars and evaluate the costs and so on are these two, standvirtual.com and olx.pt. So Stand Virtual in particular is good because you can do quite a lot of searching by the type of vehicle, by the age, by the price, by the mileage and so on. And I use it frequently. It translates to English with my sort of Google app without any problem. So once you've got your car, you have to insure it. And here's some example prices. Just to give you an approximate idea, a small family car, fully comprehensive, is about 300 euros. A medium family car, just third party, could be 216 euros. And a big executive car, like a BMW 5 Series, for example, will probably be around 800 euros, fully comprehensive. In Portugal, you insure the car, not the driver. So anyone that is legally permitted to drive in Portugal can drive your car once it's insured. In some countries, you have to take out additional insurance for additional drivers. That's not the case in Portugal. You can insure it just for third party or for third party fire and theft or fully comprehensive. Comprehensive insurance, though, is not usually available for cars over 10 years old. The insurance policy will include breakdown recovery, at least in Portugal, possibly in other parts of Europe, but at least in Portugal. And that's a legal requirement of insurance policies. So there is breakdown cover in there. Most insurances will cover you to drive within the European Union, and you must display your insurance certificate on the vehicle windscreen. I believe that law is in the process of being changed, but right now, as we speak today, it's a legal requirement to display that on the vehicle windscreen. We, of course, work with Winsurance, our insurance partners, and they can quote you for any insurance requirements across the range of companies that we work with. So if you need any referrals for any of the partners that I mentioned here, just let us know. You also have road tax payable annually from the first date of vehicle registration. The cost will vary depending on the age, engine size, and emissions of the car. But to give you some idea, the tax for a small family saloon is about 130 euros per annum. A medium will be 146, and a large executive will be around 225 euros per annum. Vehicles registered up to 2007 have lower tax rates because the rules changed in 2008. And you make payment at your local finances office or via the finance portal. You can now actually pay online. That's a recent development. Records are stored online. You don't have a tax disc or anything like that to display. But of course, the police can check the database to make sure the car is taxed at any time just by entering the car number plate. IPO is also a requirement for cars. The vehicle safety inspection certificate. This checks brakes, lights, and other areas that might be involved in safety. The laws require that all cars over 4 years of age must have an IPO test for roadworthiness. Cars from 4 to 8 years old must be retested every 2 years. And then once they're over 8 years old, they must be retested every year. You make an appointment at the local IPO center. They're dotted all over the place. There'll surely be one fairly close to wherever you choose to live. And it costs about 35 euros for the inspection. Interestingly, I heard from someone the other day whose inspection failed, and the reason it failed was because the engine was too dirty and the inspector couldn't read the engine number, so the car automatically failed. So he had to take it away, get the engine cleaned, and have it retested. Driving licenses. First of all, you can come here and you can drive in Portugal as a tourist on most foreign licenses for up to 90 days. And this includes licenses issued from Australia, Canada, New Zealand, USA, and the UK. Many other countries as well, but I think those are the countries that will be of interest to our members. If you take up residence, you must apply to exchange your license within 90 days from the date that your residency document is issued. This can be started online at imtonline.pt, and you will, from there, once you start the process, you will receive an appointment and you have to make a personal visit to have photographs taken and proof of ID and so on. You will need a medical certificate from your doctor. You not only have to show that you're fit and healthy to drive, but that you're mentally sane. And you will need to go and get a medical certificate from a doctor. That can cost about 60 euros. You'll also need your residency permit and your current driving license. You may also need a certificate of authenticity for your current driving license. That might also be a necessity. And a Portuguese license is a standard European Union approved license and it can be used in most other countries around the world. I've had a Portuguese license now for many years. I've rented cars in the States, Canada, France, UK, Ireland, and Iceland without any problems with my Portuguese driving license. Effectively, you exchange your license. So I exchanged a UK license for a Portuguese license. If I ever wanted to, I could exchange it back again. So, for example, if for any reason I decided I wanted to go back to the UK, I could exchange my license and without having to take a test or anything back in the UK. And I'm fairly sure that that applies in other countries as well. If you hold a license issued by another European Union country, you can use that license until it expires, but you must register your address, your Portuguese address with IMT within 60 days of settling. That's driving licenses. Oh, and sorry, I've to mention that again, ACP can help out there. They can actually guide you through the process. If you need their services, you let us know and we'll connect them with you. Now, a relatively new development is car leasing in Portugal, it seems to be becoming increasingly popular. And the more I watch this, the more I see the prices are moving downwards, so in the right direction. So as an alternative to buying, you can now lease a new or a nearly new car in Portugal. Leasing here is also called renting or long-term renting. There aren't distinctions between those words in Portugal. Prices range from about 300 euros per month, which includes VAT, and upwards. 300 euros per month would get you a very small car, probably brand new car, something like a Fiat 500. If anyone's familiar with those, then they're not the biggest of cars available. But if you've got the scale for 500 euros a month, you'll get into a decent sized car. I think those prices will continue to fall as leasing becomes more popular. Generally, the lease terms are from 36 to 48 months, and there will be a mileage limit. It's not unusual for them to limit it to something like 10,000 kilometers per annum, but you can increase the limit provided you're prepared to increase the monthly fee. You can arrange a lease without any initial entry fee, and the monthly fee will include all costs for maintenance, insurance, road tax, and tires. Sadly, fuel is not included, but otherwise everything is. The problem for foreigners relocating to Portugal is that they may not have the credit rating to qualify for a lease arrangement. This can sometimes be overcome if you own a property here, or if you are there certain conditions that you might be able to meet. So if you think that's an option, don't give up at the first hurdle. Come to talk to me, and I can connect you with someone who might be able to overcome those obstacles. And also, more car manufacturers are now offering lease or rental agreements, and you check their websites. If you have a look at Volvo.pt or Ford.pt, you'll see the sort of terms they're offering now for what they call long-term rental agreements on their cars. So what else do you need to know about driving in Portugal? Well, you must carry your ID or passport, your driving license, your insurance certificate, your registration document, which can also be a card now. We've got new plastic cards for now rolling out, And if an IPO certificate is applicable, you must have that as well. Those must be in the vehicle. You must also carry a warning triangle and a high-vis jacket. If you break down, there's a requirement to sight the warning triangle at a certain distance away from the car to warn other traffic that there's a hazard, and you should be wearing a high-vis jacket. I always say here that a first aid kit and high-vis jackets for all the passengers are sensible additions. For what they cost, they're well worth putting in the car. On the motorways, we have, in many cases, we have tolls to pay. You can drive through the electronic tolls and the camera will record your registration plate of your car, and then you go and visit a pay shop or a post office. You give your car registration number, and they will then tell you what you owe on the toll fees. Alternatively, and much simpler, you go to an organization called Via Verde, and you purchase an electronic tag, which then debits your credit card or your bank account, much the same as I think it's called Easy Pass in the States or something like that. The police often stage roadside checks for documentation, the documentation I mentioned above, and or speeding offences. And I heard this week that there's a new proposed law that the police will enjoy a share of any fines that they collect. So I think we can probably expect more roadside checks in the future. Sorry, did you say something there, Carl?
Yes. No. That's what
yes. Yes.
Right. Okay. Sorry, I couldn't hold that in.
Yeah, I thought it was a swear word from there for a moment, but yeah, and I wouldn't blame you. It looks like that's going to happen. That came out this week, well, there you go. Yeah, you can imagine as the weekend police party is about to arise, there'll be more roadside checks will appear.
Fundraising.
Yeah. Fines can be on the spot. The police do carry their card payment machines with them, and I know Carl's been caught, and I certainly have been caught, and had to pay our fines on the spot. So be aware of that. And also, radar speed cameras are on the increase around Portugal. There are several now dotted in the big cities, but there are more rolling out. And in those situations, you won't even know that you've been caught until a fine arrives in the post with a nice picture of you or me, in my case, sitting in the front of my car doing whatever it was, 20 kilometers per hour faster than the speed limit. So be aware of that. So that's the technical stuff over. And if you have, as Carl said, if you have any questions, put them in the chat and we'll do our best to work through those. Now let's take a look at the cost of cars in Portugal. We often hear that cars are very expensive in Portugal. And this is the second time that I've done this kind of presentation. And the second time that I've come out with similar figures to what I'm going to show you now. So today I went shopping for a Nissan Qashqai, or in the States, this car is called a Nissan Rogue. And in the States and the UK and Portugal, I found three models. You can see the mileage there, all quite similar, all 2017 models. And these are the prices that they were on offer for. So roughly the same price, 19,000 euros in the US, 18.8 in the UK, and 18 or just under 19 in Portugal for that car, with a similar mileage and so on. I did the same thing with a Ford Fiesta, which again is a very popular car, 2019 model this time. I could buy that car for about 13,885 euros in the States, 17,300 odd in the UK, and 14,950 in Portugal. These are all cars that are on the market right now. You could go on and buy these. So I carried this on. I looked for a Toyota Prius, which I know is a very popular car in the States. I found a 2006 model. Again, all roughly the same model, the same mileage, and 23,000 euros in the States, 21 in the UK, and 18,000 in Portugal. And finally, a Kia Sportage, a 2020 model, again, with similar sort of mileage, 20,000 euros in the US, 32,600 in the UK, and 29,990 in Portugal. So what does that tell me? The four cars, if I were to buy those four cars in Portugal, I would spend a total of 81,930 euros. If I bought them in the US, I would spend 76,000 euros. So in this example, we could argue that the cost of cars in the USA is about 8% less than the cost of cars in Portugal. Now, if you go back to that number that I mentioned at the very beginning, when I talked about 20,000 euros to import a car, well, maybe that 8% is not such a bad figure after all, in terms of what it might cost you to actually buy a car here in Portugal. This is the interesting one. In the UK, the total cost is 90,000 euros, which is 9% more than Portugal. And as I said, this was a trend that we picked up last time, that cars seem to be getting more expensive in the UK. But it really dispels the myth that cars are very expensive in Portugal. I'm sure we'll hear from some people about this in a moment, but those are the figures that I found today. Do keep in mind, the USA and the UK cars are likely to have higher specifications. It's not that common for cars in Portugal to have alarm systems, for example, partly because they're not deemed necessary, and partly because they're taken out in order to try and keep the cost down. So, but definitely the Portuguese cars could have, I'm not saying they have, but they could have a lower specification. However, all European cars have better miles per gallon performance than US cars. So if you're coming from the States, there's some saving to be made there in terms of the miles per gallon. And Portuguese cars hold their value more than cars hold their value in the UK or the US. 10-year-old cars, you'd be quite surprised, 10, even 15-year-old cars will still hold quite a lot of value here in Portugal. So lastly, just to touch a little bit about driving in Portugal. Well, we have about 5 million cars in this country. To give us a comparison, there are about 33 million cars registered in the UK. So outside of the built-up areas in Portugal, the roads are quiet, generally in good condition. The scenery is pretty good, and going for a drive is a real pleasure, and you will almost certainly spot a castle, as Carl likes to remind me. Back in the day when we all used to go out just for a drive to get an ice cream at the end, well, you can still do that in Portugal, and it can be a very enjoyable thing to do. Older cars are very common in Portugal because they don't rust and are relatively cheap to maintain. The Portuguese love estate cars, or station wagons as they're called in the States, and for some reason black is the favorite color. You would think it would be white to reflect the sun, but no, black is the favorite color of cars in Portugal. I wouldn't mind betting that something like 50% of cars in Portugal are black. Portuguese drivers do not study the art of indicating. I don't care what Anna might say later on. And they like to get very close to your rear, which is a signal that they want to overtake. So be aware of that. And also, every Portuguese pedestrian believes they have a right to leap onto a crossing and assume you can stop in a nanosecond. So be aware of that also. Otherwise, happy motoring, and see you in Portugal.
Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. And a very comprehensive, holistic look at motoring and buying a car in Portugal. Thank you, Jerry. Really good.
Thank you, Carl.
I've got a question, and there's some lovely greetings and questions coming in the chat as well. So thank you, everybody. And we'll get to as many of these as we can. With the leasing, something that occurred to me, because it's something I've been keeping my eye on. It seems to me that the annual limits are quite tight. I mean, that's how it works with leasing, isn't it? You only get 10 or 12,000 kilometers a year, don't you, to use?
Yeah.
So,
yes. I mean, interesting. I lease a car and I put a limit of 15,000 kilometers per year on it, which is still, you know, it's not, that's only about 10,000 miles. So it's not that much. And currently I'm sort of a year and a bit into the car, and I'm already over the thing. But I'm trying to be. But I figure I can still keep it down. Worst case scenario, I'll have to pay some extra money when I return the car, if I'm over the lease. But yes, they can be quite low. But they're not. It's not a deal breaker. I think you'll easily get 10, 15,000 kilometers.
Yeah, and just something to bear in mind. Something to bear in mind for people, so they do know there is a limit on that, and they're not going to be able to drop. What is it? Drive it like a rental, as I think people say in the US. You're not going to be able to drive it hard and forever, you know, for a long distance. So there is that. And I found another resource with the tolls that you mentioned, since I've been looking into that as well. And as you quite rightly say, you go into a pay shop or into the post office. There's also, when I last went into my local post office to show them my registration number and ask them if I had any portage fees to pay, they said you can do it online. Because their internet was down, and I'll put that into the chat as well. It's actually CTT. It is the post office's own service.
Oh, right. Yes.
Yep. And I just checked mine, and you can do it online, and it will tell you. It might not include anything in the last 48 hours, but it's a pretty good service. I've got to say. Sorry, you're going to add something.
Yeah. No, thank you. I actually forgotten about that. I have that, and I totally forgot about it because I use a Via Verde. But there's also a thing on that. If you register with CTT online, and it doesn't cost anything to register, there's also a thing where you can tick a box and they will notify you when you have a toll to pay. Yeah,
right. And that means in 3 years' time, you won't get a letter from an agency saying you didn't pay this €2.70. Which is now €9 including, and you've forgotten completely.
And your assets are frozen, and you can't sell your house, and
you can't use your multi-bank, etc., etc. So that's a really good thing to know about, and we'll make sure you've got that link as well. Brilliant, great presentation. Thanks, Jerry. Really appreciate that. One question was, will the PowerPoint be online? I imagine, as well as the recording that we'll put on YouTube, can the presentation go into the forum as well?
Yes, we'll put it on the forum. Yeah.
There you go. So whoever it was who asked that, there's your question answered straight away. Hello, Dwight in sunny New Mexico, as we would expect. Steve Merwin is also in. Good to see you, Steve. How are you doing? First question about importation then, Jerry, was what if the manufacturer is defunct? Now, that's probably in relation to the certificate of conformity, isn't it? Is that you can't get the data you want anymore?
I don't know. I just don't know. You contact us, and we'll connect you with the people who can give you the answer to that. You might find that it can't be done.
Right, and that is connected to a vintage car scenario, which we'll also get to as well. Which I think there are some exceptions with that, but it'll be the same answer. I think you speak to the experts on that. Probably cheaper to drive to North Carolina and ship from there, says Paul. I don't think we'll be bringing our 10-year-old Grand Caravan. Probably best not, from what's been said tonight. Steve saying, somewhat ironically, I think, so Jerry, you're saying shipping is an easy process. No, it can be done.
Did I say that? All I said was it can be done. I didn't say it was easy.
Well, what I neglected to add is there like a down-mouthed emoji that goes with that. So I think there was a massive dose of irony going with that comment there from Steve. Thank you for that, Steve. And yes, Jose Cruz is saying, are there exceptions if you're importing a historic vehicle, a 1970 VW Beetle, which I'd love to see driving around Lisbon, but there are exceptions, aren't there? But you
there are exceptions for classic cars, but there's no standard table or anything that I can quote you. Contact me and we'll connect you with someone who can give you the right information. It's very dependent on the actual vehicle and the year of manufacture and stuff like that.
Yeah, and he goes on to say, owning a car in Portugal will cost you dearly whether you import a car or buy one here. I guess that's true of all car ownership, though, isn't it? To be fair, we are doing both. We bought a used Mercedes with 26,000 clicks, we call them, don't we? And it was 46,000 euros, which is the most expensive car, new or used, we've ever purchased.
Yeah.
And had a Saab convertible and a Mazda in the States, both brand new. Our 250 is a hybrid, which we insisted on, but it's still expensive. We bought a brand new Prius in 2020 for $26,000. So be prepared, says Jose Cruz, to be shocked by the prices of importing or buying a car here. So you can prepare, but if you read between the lines and research a little bit harder, as you found out, Jerry, that averaging of costs and comparisons with UK and US, I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, yes, Carl. I think where there are differences are with the premium end of cars, the Audis, Mercedes, BMWs, and so on. Yeah. The bigger cars will be probably far more expensive than the figures I put up there on that site. But I try to focus on the sort of cars we might buy, average sort of small family cars. It would be possible, definitely, to buy a German car in Germany for a lot less money. Mm-hmm. And it might be worth looking at importing it, particularly if it's a hybrid. There are some breaks in doing that. But again, it's specific to each car and the value, however much you pay for the car and so on. But having said all that, it's still a complicated process. Mm-hmm. If it was easy, we'd all be going to Germany or Spain or wherever to buy our cars and just drive them back. It's not that easy. This tax thing that is payable in Portugal actually breaks EU regulations. Yeah. But the Portuguese government are happy to take the hit and pay the fines from the EU rather than lose the revenue from the tax. And that's what really has an impact on it. It's tax that's the real problem here. Also tax on selling cars. I found out the other day that a dealer buying a car and selling it on a profit can be taxed as high as 85% on that profit.
Ouch. Right.
I heard that thanks to Jackie, who was telling me that the other day. So that could hurt, and that probably explains why you have to be on your toes to negotiate hard with the dealer when you're selling your car.
Yes. Okay, that's good. Thank you for that. And George is asking, and this comes up when we're talking about health insurance payments as well. Is that per month or per year? I think that was a reference to the insurance of the car, wasn't it? And that is, you were giving prices per year.
Per year. Yes.
Right. And thank you to Paul, who's put his hand up here and might want to come in on what your comment means here, Paul. Good evening to you. Thanks for being here from the sunny Algarve. Your beautiful E-Type behind you there. Keep the receipt from the AMT machine in the car. What did you mean by that, Paul? And what did you want to add?
Yeah, if you pay for your road tax with an AMT machine, which you can do, no problem, always keep the receipt in the car, because it's the only proof sometimes that the police can see that you've actually paid it. Right. They don't all have the facility to check with AMT that it's paid, but if you can produce a piece of paper, look, there, I paid it, there's no problem there. The other point I was trying to make was we haven't talked about motorhomes. And if you want to import a motorhome and it's a manufacturer's motorhome, that's not a problem, provided it meets all the specification. However, if you buy a van and convert it to a motorhome, then you can fall into all sorts of problems when you come to try and import it here.
Well said. Yeah, that can come as a shock to people who've painstakingly and lovingly and at some cost converted a vehicle, especially if it's the steering wheel's on the wrong side, and run into all sorts of costly problems. So thank you for that, Paul. Is that your vehicle? And what on earth possessed you to park it on the beach like that?
No, that's not actually mine. I used to have had a lot of E-types, and that particular model was the 4.2 Mark II. That was a 6-cylinder engine, not the V12 that went to America. But they were the best E-type, I think, that was ever made. I bought one brand new in 1969 for £2,000.
Wow, bet you wish you had it still, right?
Oh, I do.
Jerry.
Paul, did you buy it in Portugal? Because I see it's black.
No, I bought it in the UK. But the laugh is, I had that car for 6 months, and I swapped it for an Aston Martin DB5.
Oh,
and
my
word. Talking about low money here.
Yeah.
That car today, if I'd have kept that DB5, is worth over £1 million.
Oh, my word.
That's
you could have driven it around Estoril like James Bond himself. Paul, thank you very much for that input. I'm sure you'll have a bit more to say about motoring, because I know you love your cars. And thank you for being with us here from the Algarve tonight. Cheers for that. So keep the receipt in the glove box, along with all the other things that you carry around here in Portugal. Probably the filing cabinet in the back, actually, because there's not enough room in the glove box. Paul says we need the mentally sane requirement here in the US. Sorry, can't help with that. But the reason why Jerry laughed about that, I think, is because it's not the most onerous of tests, is it, Jerry?
No, it's not at all. It's not at all. You sit there and you have a laugh and a joke with the doctor for 20 minutes while he's tapping away your information, and that's it, job done.
Yeah, it's basically like, I see you managed to walk in here. Okay,
yes,
that's good enough for me.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Is certificate, Lowell, thank you for this question. Is certified driving record also required? That's an interesting one, isn't it? From the motoring authority over in the US. That's required at later stages, isn't it?
Are we talking for insurance purposes?
No, Paul. I think this is for getting your driving license changed, and so
no, I don't think so. It depends where you. If you have if you're coming from the US, for example, you have a standard American driving license. I don't see there's any problem with that. But there is sometimes a need to have some certificate of conformity, which is just a notarization that this person is entitled to drive up to this size car or whatever it is.
All right. Well, you might want
generally speaking, when you exchange the license, it's a like for like exchange. But there are some anomalies on that. I know that UK licenses, we tend to have slightly better allowances on some motorcycles, or the size of the motorcycles, which you don't get in Portugal. But if you have a proper motorcycle license in the UK, you will have a proper motorcycle license here in Portugal.
Yeah, it's worth checking on those little sort of capability nuances or technicality nuances, like, a trailer, for example, or a minibus and other types of vehicles. So make sure you are allowed to drive. Don't just assume because you've got your license that you can drive what you used to drive in your country of origin. It's worth checking for sure. And Paul makes the point that the medical is different, for example, for an HGV license, and that would be a very different matter.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
One would hope so. Yes.
Absolutely right.
There's something else I forgot to mention, that when you make the exchange of your license, you will be given a temporary license, which is just a piece of paper. Which entitles you to drive in Portugal, and if the police stop you in Portugal, that's fine, and they will accept that. The problem is you probably wouldn't be able to go to another country and rent a car with that piece of paper as your license. So that's and it can take a few weeks for your new license to come through. So that's something you need to consider when you're making exchange, that if for any reason you want to go back to the States or back to the UK or whatever, you could have a problem renting a car.
And that's well worth knowing. And you had a good hack around that, if I remember rightly, Jerry. If you're with a rental company that keep your documents on file to save you time and trouble, that would be a way around that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, keep your old documents on that file. Until I do that with I've used Avis for years. I never show my license when I go to any Avis office because they've got my records on file.
Yep, perfect. That's a way of dealing with that then. Alison and Michael, yes, absolutely right. It is different for those under 60, but double check that with the experts, of course. But that's a good point you make there. Paul, well, I think we have to give you a little bit more of a spot, Paul, when we finish the recording with some of these points you make. But that's great. All the things that you're able to add this evening. So thanks for being here. Is it the driver or the car that's fined? That's very interesting, isn't it? Because when it comes to insurance, the owner of the car can basically let anyone else drive it, can't they? As far as the insurance works. With fines, though, Jerry, it is the person driving at the time, right? That would pick up the fine for that. Or depending on which breach it is.
I don't think so. I think it's the registered owner of the car
that picks up. Oh, okay. So that's what. So if you do lend your car to somebody, you're doing with that in mind that that helps you to be more responsible about who you're lending it to, then, doesn't it?
Actually, Nuno's got a point on that as well. Hi, Nuno.
Hello. Good afternoon.
Hello, Nuno. Belated birthday. Best wishes to you. I'm sure everybody here would want to wish you a belated happy birthday, my friend. How are you?
Thank you. All good. All good.
Good. So this, yes, the driver or the car distinction. Can you help us with that?
Yes. So if the police or GNR stops you, it's the driver who is fined. Otherwise, if the police catch you or the radar, the velocity control catch the car, will be the owner of the car who will receive the fine. Actually, the owner don't receive, if he's a company, don't receive the fine. It receives a document to identify the driver.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you for that, Nuno. I'm sure we'll be coming back to you as well for more this evening. Thanks for being here. And you may well, of course, be with us for the Dream Team session from 9 as well. Amit's here. Great to see you, Amit. Hope you're well. It's been a while since I've seen you. Businesses can get a refund, you say, on the VAT on electric vehicles, 23% discount. That's worth having, isn't it, Jerry?
Yes, absolutely. For full electric vehicles, all of the VAT is reclaimable. And the other great advantage to a business, and the driver of the vehicle does not have any benefits in kind tax. So the driver doesn't pay any tax for having the benefit of that car. So that can be a really interesting tax break for businesses or people who own small businesses.
And might sway you towards the EV transformation as well.
Yes.
And you also ask, Amit, how bad are speeding fines? Jerry, you might want to...
It wasn't horrible. I think when I got done, I don't know what, I think it was a 70-kilometer limit somewhere near the airport around Lisbon. I probably was doing about maybe 90. I think it was about 65 euros.
Okay.
I crossed a white line one time, and of course there was a policeman right there. They pulled me in, and I said, but the sun had faded the line. I said, but you can't see the line. He said, it doesn't matter. You still crossed it. And he also relieved me of about 60 euros.
Okay, this is like that scene in Jaws, isn't it, where I compare my scars?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Your story. I think your story is going to top mine, though. Go ahead.
It was 80 euros, but it could have been 200, and that was over not having the paperwork to back up the insurance square that went in the window. I thought I was doing a great job. I thought I had everything. I really felt quite confident about presenting my wad of documents to the police officer, but I didn't realize at that point that he was always going to get me for something, I think.
Yes.
And as it turned out, if I hadn't had my insurance square in the window, which you quite rightly say is probably going to be dropped anyway. But if you don't have the insurance square in the window, at the time I was fined, it was 200. It would have been 200. And if you don't have the paperwork from which you cut out the little square in the glove compartment as well, that was 80. So I paid 80. So I just Trump, you just buy a few 10 euros or so on that there. So there you go.
Well, didn't they march you to the ATM or something?
I went to the ATM and I left all my to the police officer, and I said, hold on a minute, I haven't got any more documents now. What if I get stopped again on the way to the cash machine? It was, and then on the way there, actually, I thought to myself, hold on a minute, I insure my car with Nunu. I've got the PDF of that document you want on my phone. So I went and got the money anyway, came back to the police officer. Excuse me, officer, I've actually got the PDF and paperwork that you're looking for that proves that I've got this piece of paper, this insurance that should be in my glove compartment. Yes, you do, sir, but I've already started writing out the ticket. That'll be 80 euros, please.
Oh.
Yes. So
and now he would have got 8 euros of that, or pretty soon.
Exactly. And yes, I think when we've compared notes, when we've talked, Jerry, about this and with other people, it really is part of the business plan. I think you should allow it as a motoring cost, that you might get one of those a year possibly. So factor it in, folks. Let's get to more of your questions. However, tonight, enough of that. US new cars depreciate 25% the first year historically. That's an interesting point as well. So, I mean, similar sorts of depreciation, would you say, Jerry, over here?
No, I think from new, yes, probably. But I think once they've reached a certain age, then the cars don't depreciate as quickly here. I mean, I know from, I have two daughters living in the States. They tend to buy, a nearly used car, run it for about 4 years, put 100,000 miles on it, and then it's worth nothing. Absolutely nothing. And they have to start again. Whereas here, if you had a 4-year-old car with 100,000 miles, it's still going to be worth some serious money.
That's interesting, isn't it? Old cars, people look after their cars and keep them for a long time. For sure. Yeah, so not the same sort of depreciation in that respect. Steve, really good information. Obrigado. Thank you. Igualmente to you, Steve. And is there a specific brand or model, asked Barack, that is more popular than others, i.e. Audi, BMW, Renault, Nissan, Ford, Peugeot, etc.? And Paul, I think, saying the best-selling car in Portugal is Renault, and second is Peugeot. We can come back to that sort of discussion, but just an idea. Well, European brand.
I didn't mention French and Italian cars for a reason. They are very popular here. I didn't mention them because they're not that popular in the States. So as far as I know, it's not easy to buy a Renault or a Peugeot. I think you can buy a Fiat in the States, but I didn't mention them because I couldn't compare them. I wanted to compare like with like. I believe that Peugeot is probably the most popular, or one of the most popular cars here in Portugal. And Renault in Portugal, they're big manufacturers. They make very reliable cars. Yes, look at them, consider them.
There you go, Barack. Nunu, were you wanting to add something to this about popularity?
Yes, regarding French cars, so Peugeot, Citroën, and Renault. Also Dacia. Dacia, it's a brand from Renault. They are known and they have the reputation of being very comfortable.
What, French cars generally, or the Dacia?
Yeah,
French cars. Okay. Who'd have thought? Okay. We have some feedback on Portuguese driving here. Portuguese drive, according to Amit, well, not exactly, but Portuguese drive like there's a pregnant lady in the back who's about to give birth. And we can say this tonight because that's according to a Portuguese friend. I feel more comfortable when it comes from the Portuguese. Fantastic presentation, Jerry, says Paul. Great to see you again. This is a really good question from Jyoti and John, and I'll finish the recorded part of the presentation here in a few minutes, because otherwise it'll be a marathon effort, but we will stick around to answer more questions. So just in the last couple of minutes here, what happens if you have an accident? That's a really good question, Jerry, isn't it? Because it's not necessarily like other countries when you have a prang.
Yeah, first thing is you call the police. That's what I know. You must carry an accident report form. You call the police. You have to wait until the police arrive. and then they will make an assessment. I've not had an accident yet, please, touch wood, in Portugal. So maybe Nuno can pick up on that for me, please.
Okay, so that's right then, isn't it? Get your yellow high-vis jackets on, call the police, and don't move the vehicles is standard practice.
Yes. If anyone is stopped on the road, the first thing to do before leaving the car is wear the yellow or the green jacket vest.
Yep.
The first thing, otherwise you could be fined. And regarding fines, I think that in this moment is for approval in the Parliament a law that allows policemen and tax guys to receive commission from all the fines. So if these go ahead, my expectation is that fines will become more and more.
Well, thank you for being the bearer of such good news tonight, Nuno. What you might spend in that, he might be able to save you on insurance premiums. Phone him for a quote, Nuno. But the important thing is not to move the vehicles, isn't it? Because some people might think, well, we're causing an obstruction here, and it's not that serious, so we'll move the vehicles. You're not allowed to do that, are you, until you get permission from the police?
No. You are allowed to do, and the problem is not the police. The problem is the insurance.
Right.
Because if you remove the vehicles, the police cannot do their work.
Yes.
So this is the problem.
And that's why people don't move their vehicles, and that's why you sometimes get a massive tailback in the street, and you go past
problem
it.
Everyone is just buzzing and shouting and so on, and do strange.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Really good question, Jyoti and John. Thank you for that. We've got other questions, but we'll attend to those after we've stopped the recording. Just time for me to say thank you to Jerry for that. Really great presentation, as ever, Jerry, on motoring. Our inadvertent motoring expert, as it turns out, after all. I mean, basically, because you've helped so many people, I think, Jerry, you've built up this knowledge, haven't you, by helping people in the community here.
Yeah. And I bought and sold a few cars myself, so I've got some sort of feel for how it works now.
So thank you very much. Your presentation will be in the forum and the recording, of course. You may be watching this as we speak as a recording. So thank you very much, everybody, for your questions. Let's get to a few more of those after we pause the recording.